In this episode, with my guest Michael Bednar-Brandt, who is at the forefront of human-centered innovation leadership, we are discussing how AI will affect businesses with a focus on the telecom industry. On Digital Talk, we spotlight entrepreneurs, leaders, and innovators using digital tech and telecoms to drive global impact in a changing world. Uncovering the unexpected, spotlighting hidden gems, and sharing inspiring stories that shine a light on the most transformative corners of our industry.
Did you know?
Did you know? Currently in telecoms, artificial intelligence, AI, is banded around as the remedy for all ills. But where did the term originate from, and in what context was it originally used? If you find this an intriguing question, then stay tuned to the end to hear more. So today on Digital Talk, I happen to be sitting here in lovely Vienna with a friend of mine who I've actually never met before, Michael, at least not in person, and we've had some interesting discussions in the past. And we met on LinkedIn because of some of the work that he's been doing also in the telco sector. He has this idea of a leadathon. That was the idea we talked about at the time. And I thought, let's catch up here and see what he's doing. But Michael is definitely one of the people that is a thinker and tries to solve problems. So welcome to the podcast, Michael.
Thank you very much. It's great to have you.
So one of the things I'd like to ask you, can you just give a bit more background so that we can share that with the audience?
Sure. And I tried to do the 2 minutes version, not the 2 weeks version we discussed earlier. Very briefly, I worked in technology, IT, for nearly all of my career. At a company here in Vienna, Austria, we created some IP, sold that to an American company, and I went there, did some international business, loved that, from Singapore to South Africa. I've seen the world in that time. Managed sales offices and really enjoyed the period. And then this company got bought by a small little American company called Oracle. And so I went from a couple hundred people to 130,000 people. And that felt like visiting the St. Peter's Cathedral in Rome, right? If you ever been, you open the door and you have this feeling, wow, that's big. And I thought I'm going to stay 3 months. And it was 10 years at the end, and really an interesting ride. Well, since then, I'm just working both as a consultant with a lot of technology, but also human-centered and innovation history, and now working on a startup in the field that you just mentioned, leadership.
Yeah, so I mean, leadership is I think, and one of the topics I wanted to cover with you was, leadership is continually evolving and changing, maybe more than ever. I mean, you're the expert on it, but let me just go to an event I went to last week, which was called FutureNet, which was held in London. And it was a good event, but we had the operators, you had the vendors, 3 main topics, I'd say: orchestration, automation, and then AI were the sort of the consensus. I mean, to me, AI is really just another way of using data and people being able to use data, to meet and solve problems. But part of it is, it's not just a technical issue, right? It's something that also needs to be looked at from an organizational perspective in different ways. So can you share some of your thoughts as to what AI means in an organizational perspective?
It's a fascinating topic because we think of it mostly and we treat it as a tool, like we have treated other tools in the past. There's a new software, a new technology, and we look at problems, at use cases, and seek to apply it. And that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But the development we see with AI is that it is going much, much deeper and will have much stronger effects. And one of them is what is coming with all these thinking AIs, the multi-step AIs, agentic AI, whatever the phrases you want to use and the hype word you want to use. where you will just task an AI with doing something and it goes off and does it on its own, right? Like an employee, like an assistant in an organization, which opens up a full can of worms, because how is that managed? How is that steered? With whom is it interacting? How does it understand whether the outcome fits to the organization or is helpful, or with whom to talk, all this kind of stuff. So currently these agents are half programmed, but very soon we'll see them acting really like employees. And that changes the whole leadership conversation from managing people to managing people in the AI systems. How do you do that as a manager? Most people are not equipped to that, or even don't think about this perspective. And it's a topic we could talk very long about. One interesting perspective that we see currently is that there are frameworks evolving from the technology side. Like you have aspects in NVIDIA's NeMo framework, or you have Entropic's MCP, Model Context Protocol, that actually do things that we also talk about in systemic leadership. They create the environment for the AI agent to make sense of the situation, to have some guardrails and boundaries to be able to do the job, right?
Today's episode is sponsored by IFG Consulting Europe, who help operators to tap into technologies to accelerate digitization of the network, drive revenues, and reduce costs by championing promising software providers in telecoms, enterprise, and mobile markets. Go to ifgconsultingeurope.com to find out more.
That sounds interesting. And just to explain a little bit more about where do you think, if we're sticking with the line of telecommunications, where do you see the challenges for them, and where do you see the management? I mean, is there I'm thinking if you sometimes get a curve from 1 to 10. 10 is you're there and 1 is you're starting. But, how do you think these managers today are coping, and what is their strategy, given that they maybe haven't necessarily started along the journey that you're maybe suggesting?
You're putting me in a tight corner here, right? It's like,
well, what they start with, I mean, I think it's maybe put it that way. I mean, we're all faced with this tsunami of AI. I call it tsunami in the sense of it's there, it's big, it's potentially, it's coming to me at speed. I can use it in my private life. My children know more about it, most likely I ever will. I have then, if I'm a leader, I've got people in organizations saying, oh, can I use this for this, that, and the other? So I guess, it is a question they must be having. And I imagine, and maybe this is some of the work, maybe it's a question as much as anything else, is there methodology to this madness and the way of trying to approach it? I mean, if let's say I'm sitting there, I saw just before you answer or give me some input on that, I think on LinkedIn, whether I got, not LinkedIn, I think it's another program, Twitter, which is of course not what it's called anymore, not relevant, it's called. But they then say, here's a calendar, 30-day calendar, learn all these 30 AI programs in a month and you'll be a Superman type of thing. And I'm thinking, well,
the answer is no.
The answer, but all of us are faced with this challenge, whether you're a leader or not. But let's stick with the leadership. What's the framework? What do they have to put in place? So you're starting now, because otherwise this train, I called it tsunami a minute ago, but you can also, trains just can come and bulldoze through you. I'm thinking of guide rails, as you mentioned. I'm thinking of data sovereignty. I'm thinking of, as I say, uncontrolled processes. Anyway, you can share a bit more. What is your advice? You've got the opportunity here to advise the executives of the telcos to start looking at it, maybe even contact you at some point if they really like what you have to say. But let's start with that.
I like how you phrase it, right? Let's take a topic and then make it as big as world hunger or peace and now come up with solutions. There's a few interesting aspects around that. One is we see an acceleration everywhere, and that's not new with AI, right? Software-defined networks or similar things are accelerating time to market, of changes once implemented, and similar concepts. So we see a collapse, like in the car industry or in other industries, a collapse or compression of the time it takes to change something. which increases competitive pressure and therefore increases not only it helps you cut costs. That's how large operators usually look at that. Yeah. How can we cut costs through that? But it also increases the pressure to stay at the forefront of providing new and helpful value to your clients, right? Because you need to, if you only cut costs, you're dead, right? There's a race to the zero. You need to stay on the forefront of providing value in a game that gets faster and faster and faster. Now, what AI is doing, and whether you look at that from the network layer or from any other perspective, you're turning that volume up to 11, right? That's what AI is doing in that concept. And if you look at it from a leadership perspective, and leadership for me is everybody, right? Everybody who has influence in an organization, right? We see the trends that you want to bring decisions closer to the market, as close as you can. You provide the frameworks for that. And everybody who has influence is kind of leading in an area, and you need to embrace that. And if you look at it from that perspective, there's a massive shift, a mental shift happening, or needs to happen, from what are the technologies that we are deploying, what are our rollout plans, and all this kind of stuff. What is the upskilling we need? Do we need to do more Java or whatever it is, right? This is the conversations we see usually today. But the real question is, what is it that the organization needs to be capable of in terms of performing on a holistic level, right? Not just technology, but how do we run that speed? How do we employ methodologies that cannot work on year-long plans, but can adjust to change in a very short time? How do we hire the right people? How do we communicate? All these kind of things. So leadership shifts really from being the smartest in the room, sorry, no offense meant, but having a lot of industry knowledge and a lot of past experience to finding out what works tomorrow or today. Right? And that as a whole system, as a whole organization. So what does the organization need to be able to do is the really fascinating question today.
So I'm hearing things like quicker cycles. I'm hearing agility, and no one's sitting there doing, I know everything better than anyone else, right? Because I've been there, because no one has, right? What you're also suggesting. So no one's actually, the journey we're on, and also the organization is a new journey. So no one can say, I have the great idea of where we'll be in, as you say, in 3 years or 5 years.
We don't know how the telecom market will look like in 10 years, right? You can't predict it today with the developments we have. And by the way, it's not only AI, right? Sustainability is still there. You need to be energy efficient. You need to reduce your CO2 numbers. You need to comply to all the regulations that's going on. You need to somehow wrestle the local government regulations that pop up more and more. All this kind of stuff is still there. It's just accelerating. So you somehow need to find a new way of managing that is not stable and managing the status quo. And then you have a little bit of change projects, but it's change all the time. It's a fitness level. It's not a one-time established skill set and capability. It's an ongoing fitness level where you need to go to the gym every day, right? To stay.
So that's a good analogy. So what gym is that they need to go to? I mean, is it, again, what do they start with? They're sitting there in their offices. They've got all these things happening. Is there a methodology? Is there a book that you recommend? Is there a training? I mean, how do they, because as you say, it's a different paradigm. Basically, it's a paradigm shift, I think fundamentally we're saying, in the way that they as individuals work and the way the organizations work, and more importantly, the way their competitors and the world in which they interact. Because I was thinking of like customers. I mean, up to now, I was just wondering, and I don't want to give the name away, but this is quite interesting. Last week at FutureNet, one of the operators, I think it was the head of operations, was saying service assurance, which is basically taking the feeds from the network and making sure the network's running correctly. We've implemented all the different software that exists there, all different systems. We might get a feedback out after half an hour, maybe longer, and that's too slow. So we're now sort of crowdsourcing or finding, because of the number of subscribers they have, it's the complaints of customers that drive them to finding out problems quicker. Yeah. So they can use the customers' information about what's going wrong is more relevant to them from what the network's telling them.
Yeah, and that's not new. Some of the new entrants, the software-defined companies, players, and so forth, have done that for years. That they kind of crowdsourced customer support, for example.
Yeah, but it was what I meant to. But he doesn't. What you're saying is doesn't trust his network, or his network's not agile enough to give him the data in time. You see. So, like the whole point, he's invested a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
Trying to build intelligence in his network. I mean, remember, we're now trying to also automate that and full autonomous networks. Absolutely. And he's saying, that ain't, to me, he's basically saying, well, at least at the moment, that's not working. It's a lot easier for me to go and still go to the, the customer side of things. But it also brings to the point of, you're sort of agentic AI or things. Customers also get smarter, right? So they'll also be able to maybe be more savvy about their supplier. So it's not just, as I was trying to say, in the context of the organizational side, your customers are also smarter. It's not that you as an organization are smarter, but also the people you're trying to sell to maybe also become smarter, which is also something you have to take on board. So, how are you gonna deal with that, right?
Well, there's a good side. I worked a lot in human-centered design, and there's a realization that although you could be smart easily today about a lot of things, right? You could have AI help you learn coding, even if you have never had any experience with that. And you could maybe build your own network. I have no idea, right, where this could go. What customers ultimately want is a basic service and convenience, right? They want their needs to be fulfilled. Beyond that, it's only a very small number that really freaks out and goes into a specific area. So the good side to that is, if you understand and solve the needs of your clients, they will not care about where the phone contact is coming from or where the energy is coming from or this kind of service. The majority of people is not crazy about that. So there's a balance here, right? You can't screw up, but more than a certain level is not needed in that field. And that will stay the same, right? And the rest is optimization. Are you fast enough? Are you relevant enough? Do you provide added values that are relevant? And that's a very fun topic because we all know that telcos have been on all the new trends, video on demand and whatever it is. And they all have more or less failed to really capitalize on them in the long term. So doing that better would be a fantastic area. But the original question was where to go. The cheesy answer, of course, is to me, right? Go to Michael. The less cheesy answer is there are new paradigms for leadership evolving as we speak. They're not common practice. The opposite. We see still leadership development programs reinforce ways that are not working anymore, to be honest. Yeah. There's a lot in leadership that is about, and that's deeply culturally embedded, about individuals, right? The further up we go, the more we look for the strong leader that solves it single-handedly, like the cowboy in the movies. And that starts in school and this goes all the way up to education, training programs. But in a fast-changing world, it's a team sport. It is like you don't go to soccer and put 11 Ronaldos on the field, right? And then train them to be even better themselves, but never talk much about how to work together. You need to develop team play, a dynamic way of adapting instinctively to situations and driving the game forward. And that is mostly missing in leadership today. So there's new methods evolving. I'm working on some of them myself. And it's a very dynamic field currently. It's evolving.
So how are you able to stay ahead of the curve yourself then on this? Because you're advising others, right? So at the end of the day, you also have to be evolving yourself, I think, no?
The funny thing is I'm coming to the topic of leadership not because I'm a leadership expert or I'm the great manager. I was a general manager for a time for 8 or 10 years. But am I the best manager in the world that can teach everybody? No. Yeah, there's other people who have more substantial careers. I'm also not a consultant in leadership all my career. I'm not an advisor. I'm not a leadership expert, whatever. I'm coming at it from innovation management. I've been in innovation management and scaled innovation management, talking global programs, talking hundreds of projects, thousands of people, this kind of stuff. And the thing that was always the ultimate barrier or problem was how organizations are run. They're run to maintain stability and control. It's deeply embedded in all large organizations, in the culture, in the fabric, in everything of leadership today. And I'm coming at the topic of leadership from understanding it as the fundamental problem that we need to solve and evolve, not because I'm an expert of old in that area. And we have spent 3 years now on researching what's out there, on seeing the patterns that are established in large organizations across Europe, but also on merging elements that are helpful from different disciplines, from systemic leadership and systemic approaches, from innovation, from human-centered approaches from other areas, and trying to find something that is, or create something that's actually doable for all the managers out there that are already running at 120% every day, right? And that's the trick, not having something smart as, but nobody can actually apply it, but coming with something that's actually doable and simple. And I think we've cracked the code, and there will be others.
So that's very interesting. One of the takeaways from last week, one of the executives of a European operator was saying, all our employees are going to go on AI training. It's a mandatory.
Yes, and it's mandatory by law.
Is it?
Yeah, it has become. It is becoming. It depends
Where's
on the country.
Which country?
European-wide. It will be a demand that you have to put.
But the next question is which
especially
AI?
Managers.
Yeah, but then the question is which AI? Because there's so many fields of AI. I mean, to say you'll be trained on AI, I still come back to one of the first things I said. It's actually a question of, the AI is as good again as the data. I come back to data because I still think that's the heart of all these things. The AI is, again, a methodology of and technology which allows you to extrapolate more quickly and more versatilely information, which previously, and democratize it, because previously it was the preserve of the IT and the data analysts. So it's also something, again, immediately from your phone, right? I'm a late convert, if now is late, to the AI in certain ways, because I listened to an interesting podcast where this guy was saying, use AI as a sparring partner. So like you've got a thought, you've got a particular situation. But I thought that was quite a good way of using AI, because sometimes I think we throw a lot at AI, like machine learning, other things, and there are going to be different layers and capabilities of it. But for me personally, the idea of using a sparring partner to help me make clever decisions or realize something by almost like asking a question, well, what am I missing? Or what have I not understood about a particular situation? Have you got any ideas? I think that's quite powerful. I used it actually in a sales meeting where I thought there's a difficult customer, not sure how I should approach him. What are the topics that I should be asking him? What should he care about? And the AI gave me some pretty good feedback. And I thought, I was like going, wow, it was like amazing.
And you asked the right question. What AI or what kind of AI? You have to be specific on that one. Where all the regulations coming from the EU AI Act and similar regulations put in place that are demanding a very conscious way of working around AI is coming from all the different forms of misuse and understanding that can happen. You have a lot of compliance topics. If you just put customer data in an AI that's hosted somewhere in the world, you can't do that. There's GDPR that's against that in many cases. And it's so easy to use that people just say, hey, it makes my job easier. I need to do a reply email to my insurance client. I just pop that into ChatGPT. No. You can't do that, of course, right? And then there's other aspects that go a little bit deeper, right? Understanding the limits of AI, understanding hallucination and similar concepts that you just can't trust it, right? It's a neural network. At the end of the day, that's at work. It is probabilistic like humans, right? And all make mistakes. You have to check it, and you're still responsible for the outcome. And what are you going to do? Similar, for example, in medicine, it can help you pre-detect if there's cancer in an image, but there's still the doctor who is responsible for that. And the doctor needs to understand that this is a machine. It's great at what it does, but it's not 100%. And there's this and that limitations. And so all the training aims predominantly, of course, at avoiding the risks of using AI, the obvious risks, especially with generative AI.
So in your own life, can I ask how you're using AI?
I use it a lot in business, of course. I love to
What
use
sort of generative?
Gen AI. Yeah, use a lot of Gen AI. I use it for writing. I use it as a sparring partner, as you mentioned. I'm hugely frustrated, but it's also a super insight about the bias in there. In economics, most of the AI is fed from or trained upon the internet. And in economics, most of the internet is books and publications that are more or less opinion and experience based, not peer researched, hard review that is really strong evidence, like in physics or medicine. In economics, there's a lot of feelings and emotions and interpretations and all this kind of stuff in all the books out there. And we have a massive bias, just for example, towards this hero culture and leadership. And if you work with AI on that, it doesn't matter which one, Google or OpenAI or Tropic or whatever, even if you write about, for example, specifically about collective leadership forms and systemic leadership forms and all this kind of stuff, it will sneak you in sentences that look at the decision maker on the top and the hero, that have this notion of hero leadership. It's super frustrating, but also super interesting because the bias of AI reflects the bias of society based on the internet. So it tells us that the way how we run organizations today is deeply culturally embedded, but it is end of life. And that's a very exciting time.
It is, and just slight change of tack, but I don't want to use your brain in this session. And that, given that you have done some work with telcos,
yes,
what is your prediction in how things might change and in what time frame? I mean, how do you think, from your perspective, someone who's really sort of outside in, where do you think they'll get the gains or improvements versus, I mean, what time frame and what will change? I mean, we have a flat organization. Will we have less people? Will there be processes which are no longer required? I mean, I've given you a process which, I mean, I can think of is still, even though theoretically you would have thought these things have been solved years ago, but still, you know, people sometimes need to go to site, to a customer's premises to check something out, to even work out, is there a problem or not? I guess AI should be able to help in that, be able to, if you get the right data together, you don't need to even run the person out, right? You also, lights out NOx is one of the topics being mentioned now. So network operations center, no humans running it. That's something predicted. You know, what other things in the telco, just from your external side? You have to obviously, I'm not asking you to list them all, but at least some ideas. And then the other thing is, what should that leader focus on? What is the one that got you? So I'm treating you as an AI in that sense. Like on the one side, what are the, actually I am in a way. I was like, what are the, you know, logical things which will happen? But on the other side, what are the less obvious things?
Wow, that's a big question. I have to put in the disclaimer, I'm not a futurist, right? I don't look at the trends in the future every day. What is obvious is that after video and multiple video streams at the same time and real-time gaming and all this kind of stuff, we're kind of hitting a data volume limit, saturation. Yeah, so we see...
It's all about us as humans now being able to absorb that, you mean?
Currently, you see a flatlining trend in growth, right?
Correct.
Which implies that volume growth is not a growth strategy or competitive strategy for the future, which will imply that the market is going to consolidate, right? So you have to cut cost. So to maintain your margins or even grow your margins, you need to cut costs. So we will see, I guess, we'll see much more standardization. We see large players and small players trying to fight against the split up of nations, which have increasing laws for local regulations. On the other hand, the companies will try to do standardization. Maybe we'll see even larger corporations in terms of multi-country.
That's something I think the EU is getting more warming to, yes.
Yes. So that's obvious. You mentioned lights out capabilities. We see the first, and that's different industries, but we see the first lights out factories in China. that are operating without humans in the room. And if you think about that a little bit, that tells you that they not only operate fully automated, they also need to adjust or address a certain level of maintenance fully automated, which is quite interesting to think about. NOCs are interesting because one of the biggest problems, and that this will remain for a while, is cybersecurity. And humans are so too slow in that playing field. So that's a very interesting area too. But in general, I think, and we see that in every industry, but in telco, I think it will be extreme in the next couple of years, is that you will take out substantial pieces of traditional operations and project work, and you will see either a shift to cost leadership through that, or a shift to substantial and creative added value. And by the way, you mentioned physical repair and stuff like that. I have a prediction that within the next 5 years, we will also have the iPhone moment of robotics. There's so much going on currently behind the scene in AI and robotics that I think we'll see robots becoming a household thing, like ChatGPT, like the iPhone, whatever it is, in the next 5, max 10 years, but I guess in the next 5 years. And that will also have implications to all kind of field work.
So the company which created a mobile plan for dogs is on the right track.
Wow.
At MWC, there was a company supposedly, and I think expanding the market. You know, there's a new market. I'm not sure exactly what you tell the dog or how the dog's supposed to respond to it. But supposedly there is a mobile phone. Sorry.
If you see robots really taking up outside confined environments, in warehouses, they are a reality today, but outside confined environments, there's a huge role to play for the telco operators in that space if they play it. What can also happen is there's a huge role for cloud computing or for video on demand, whatever, but that's mostly taken by other players. So that's why I say telco is either going to be highly cost efficient and scale, and or really focused on new revenue, new value.
And maybe to the cost, I think maybe both in a way. Yeah. I think the other thing, if I compare it to other industries, at least this is my thesis, is that you'll end up with specialization, I'm going to call it. And what I mean by that is, instead of having one telco that does the whole stack, right, you'll end up, and you were talking about it in a way, the internationalization, you'll get a player, I'm thinking of the oil industry or whatever, you get certain players that play a particular layer in the value chain, but then they play broad, a bit like a cloud provider. You're playing a board across everyone, you support everyone, but even Ericsson, I guess, does that. And sometimes. So you're providing a more high volume game, but a certain layer. And then actually you're making your service, coming back to the comments about AI and APIs, if you like, you provide that service then to the next person in the chain. So it's a layered situation because we have like currently you have wholesale providers, for example. So I happen to be sitting here at an MVNO event happening here. But basically, in a way, ideally for an operator perspective, they want an API relationship with MVNOs because then they can just consume the Deutsche. So the network becomes programmable. And then there might be layers within that network infrastructure which are programmable. So that's what I'm talking about, a layered approach. And you could get specialization, which are broader. So instead of each operator at the moment, current situation, give you a view on this, each operator trying to figure it out their own way, you will get specialists who say, I know how to do that. I will do it for, 50% of the operators in Europe, or I will do it for a larger section of the market. As I say, to this day, it actually does happen. The likes of Ericsson, I believe, and I don't want to be quoted on this and apologize again from a podcast perspective, as this in numbers aren't quite right, but I think they've got about 50 opcos have their NOCs. They run their NOCs, Ericsson, from Romania. So even though the telcos, you're saying, are regionally organized, having to meet their local regulations, fundamentally under the hub, if you like, there are some companies which are providing a larger service across the piece. And I think that might be another area. And coming back to the AI aspect, do you think there'll be specialist AIs which are only relevant for telcos? Do you think the telco industry will build its own ecosystem?
I don't know about that. Jensen Huang from NVIDIA is famous for this quote, right? The last 10, 15 years have been all about building the building blocks or the groundwork or the basement for AI. And now everybody and their dog is about building industry-specific solutions with it. So we see startups all over the planet working on industry-specific solutions. Many of them will fail, but some will be very successful sooner or later. But also all big companies are using the technology available, the frameworks. It's not only the chips and the models, it's all the frameworks, the tools, the software development tools, all this kind of stuff, and trying to build industry solutions. And I'm not deep enough in that space to comment on telcos, but for sure. But this kind of conflicts a little bit with the other statement that I have a big question mark a little bit on telcos, if I'm honest, because, I mean, the network is physical or wireless connection to IP. That's it for the future. Everything else is software on top and can be done by anybody. Radically thinking, but that's a reality we all know, and we're talking about since 10 years about that, because it's in many cases already a reality today. And there's just a slowness of the market that this hasn't really shaken up everything. And the only opposite to that, or the only counterpart to that, is strong brands. If you look at Deutsche Telekom, for example, Europeans' number 1 or 2 largest brand currently, super successful in that area. Brands are big in a time where you can get everything from everybody for little money, right? Yeah. Brands are essential. They're customer-facing hooks for stability in a world gone crazy for most people, right? So brands are something. But predicting where this is going to lead, very hard currently.
Well, I'm aware of your time, and it's been a real pleasure to have you on the podcast. I like to ask one more question. We like to give people a shout-out capability. So is there someone in the work that you're doing that you want to give a shout-out for? Could be a company even, it could be something else, it could be a colleague, someone that impresses you.
Wow, you put me on the spot
I realized,
right now.
sorry, I didn't ask that at the beginning, I didn't mention that. But
that is very hard. There's a lot of people who are doing fantastic stuff, with no question. I have the pleasure of also working with some guys like the Fingersgarden guys who are working on bringing physicality back, especially in collaboration. We see kind of an anti-trend to online, that being in a room with the people does something. Collaboration, structuring that in a great way is really exciting. But I don't have a great shout out right now, other than, of course, Mr. Ian, who's doing fantastic. Mr. Ian, who's sitting in front of me and who's doing fantastic podcasts.
You're very kind. You're very kind indeed. No, it's been a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
And I think it's been an interesting discussion, spontaneous as well, which is also nice to see. And it's really been a pleasure to meet you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Did you know?
The term artificial intelligence was first coined by John McCarthy in 1956, a prominent computer scientist, and he introduced it at his Dartmouth summer research project on artificial intelligence. The context for coining the term was to bring together researchers to explore the possibility of creating machines that could simulate aspects of human intelligence, such as learning, reasoning, and problem solving. If you've enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to rate us and subscribe, and feel free to follow us on LinkedIn. And if you have comments or ideas for future episodes, please send us an email. Thanks for being part of the Digitel Talk community and for listening. Stay tuned.